What does gay pride have to do with role-playing? Well, in my case, everything. And here's why. Hello and welcome to this week's episode on how to be a great GM. My name is Guy, and in this episode, it's an incredibly personal episode for me, and it's one that I think, if you are one of the people out there who go, why do we need such a thing as gay pride, or gay pride doesn't have any place in role-playing, this video is for you. And if you are someone who was like me, then hopefully this video will help you to find happiness as I did. So it is a video based on my experiences and my opinions, and that's all there is to say about that. What am I talking about? Well, when you look at the idea of gay pride, it is the notion of celebrating that there are people out there who are different from everybody else, which is an absolutely admirable fact. Whether it's gay pride or people who are green pride or people who have wings and speak like pony pride, it doesn't matter in my opinion. The idea is about accepting others regardless of who or what they are. And that for me is the fundamental message that I really want to send through in this particular video. But what does this have to do with gay pride? Well, when I was growing up as a young gay man, I grew up in a country where electroconversion therapy was still a thing. They literally would attach electrodes to various body parts of homosexuals and electrocute them into trying to be averse towards liking people of the same gender. They did this until the very late 1980s, which I know for a lot of you is earlier than you were born, but for many of you, you were around back then. So I grew up in a particularly hostile environment towards my sexuality, which I didn't even understand was a thing until I was in high school, where I was then severely bullied. Not for being openly gay, I hid myself behind many, many, many layers of hatred and anger and shame and self-doubt. I hid behind all of that and avoided trying to be sexual in any shape or form, because of the stigma that went with it. But then I moved from the town that I grew up in, and I moved to a coastal town where there were lots of surfers and life was a little bit more relaxed, and I attended university. And it was there that I started to realize that either I have to accept who I am, or I'm going to continue to be a frustrated, angry person. And I couldn't necessarily accept who I was in public because there was still a massive stigma around that entire thing. Now, by this stage, South Africa, the country that I grew up in, had gone through a major political upheaval and was trying to become an incredibly inclusive and representative country. So there was a major shift from a political perspective, anyway, on paper, of the attitude towards homosexuality, which, although it was encouraging, there were still reports of people being killed for their sexuality, in very horrific ways as well, I might add. But there was one space that I could possibly express who I truly was in, and that was in role-playing. So I will never forget when I was in my first year of university at the tender age of 19 or 20, somewhere around there. Maybe it was my second year. I forget now. It was so long ago. There was a role-playing group that wanted me to join their sessions through a mutual friend. And I was emphatic. And I don't remember exactly why I was so emphatic at that stage, but I was emphatic that they had to know that I was a gay man. And they had to accept that before I would join their group. Now, why was I being so demanding? Why was I forcing this upon these poor, poor people? What evil agenda did I have? I didn't have any evil agenda. I wasn't trying to force anything on anyone. I just wanted to be able to have one space in my world, my real world, where I could just be me. And I didn't have to pretend to be someone else. I didn't have to have false girlfriends or things like that. This is not a sob story, by the way. This is a celebration. Because those players went, we don't care what the hell you are. Come and play with us. If you're a good player, you get to stay. If you're a bad player, go away. And I roleplayed with him for the next 12 years until I moved to an even bigger city elsewhere on the planet. That was an incredibly empowering space. Ironically, or perhaps because I wasn't under any pressure then to be something that I wasn't, I don't think I ever actually played a gay character. I don't recall particularly playing a straight character either, simply because romance wasn't what our GM liked to include, and after a few months of role-playing, I became the default GM, and so then I played everything, and then I could include gay characters and straight characters and everything in between that I just needed as an NPC in my game. But it gave me a space to just sort of be me and explore myself and be comfortable knowing that here are people who don't care and who accept me for who I am. And so I always tried to make sure that my table was then never telling someone to not be who they fundamentally believed themselves to be. Fast forward to a few years ago now, 10 years ago, and I had a GM who was trying to run a game, and I had a friend of mine, not a close friend, but a friend nonetheless, who wanted to play an anthropomorphic embodiment of basically a furry. A rather interesting character build in terms of that whole thing. But the GM at the table went, no, I don't allow that sort of thing at my table. Keep that away. You are not welcome at the table anymore. Needless to say, that GM did not GM for me ever again. Why would that sort of restriction be imposed? Why is there that fear that, no, you can't play this, you can't play a catfolk or a this or a that, that's weird, that's sexually deviant, and I won't have it at my table? I can only assume it is because of an intolerance or a fear that it may influence the person who is against it. It could also simply be a complete misunderstanding. Why would you want to play a toaster? What possible enjoyment would you get out of playing a toaster? Well, I identify with toasters and I want to be a toaster. That is, as far as I can say, not the ridiculousness of being a furry, but the ridiculousness of preventing someone from playing at your table in a make-believe imaginary world simply because you don't understand what it means to them. So that was a very powerful lesson for me in terms of, no, if you want to come to the table and play this particular type of character, I want to support you and understand why that makes you happy. Because if I'm your friend and that makes you happy, shouldn't I be doing everything in my power to make sure that you remain happy? Well, there are, of course, certain limits. Now, I will always draw the limit at as long as it doesn't affect any other sentient living being. So animals, or if you are deciding that people should be executed because of the way they look or the way they talk or the way they think, then you are not welcome at my table. So there are lines. And I guess I have to look at it and say, well, is that the same line as saying, well, I don't want gay characters at my table or gay people at my table? And I feel that the primary differentiator, and this I think is something that I feel very personal about, is that if you sit at my table and you want to play someone who hates orcs, but at the same time, you are not telling any other character to hate orcs or any other players to hate orcs, where is the harm in saying, well, you can sit at my table and hate orcs? It's a very fine line, and it's one that is incredibly complex and incredibly difficult, because you start going, well, what's the difference between an orc and, let's say, someone of the Jewish faith? Whoa. Now there's a line that's suddenly being crossed. So as game masters, we are treading this incredible space of we are either endorsing or we are not endorsing, we are entrenching our own values or we're not entrenching our own values. Where does the line stop and where does friendship then start? Because I know my friendships around the table are far stronger when everyone is free to be whom they are rather than putting on a mask. So this is not going to be a long video, hopefully, about this whole thing. And I'm not trying to tell you how to run your game. I am simply trying to impress upon you that sometimes allowing someone to be who they are can actually make a huge difference. And I speak now to two players that I had on two separate occasions. They didn't know each other, but they were good friends of mine. I thought I was a good friend of theirs, but there was something that I didn't know and that only came through in role-playing. And one day, this one friend of mine, who was sitting at the table, he turned to me and he said, would it be a problem if he arrived in the next gaming session wearing a woman's blouse? And I went, I don't care what you come in, as long as you arrive on time and, you know, don't bring sticky snacks and put them all over the miniatures and you've prepared your character backstory and. It, for me, was a no-brainer. I don't care. As long as, I mean, you can sit there naked for all I care, as long as you're not doing anything obscene or disruptive to the game. Do what you like. Let's be open and honest. So he arrived in a blouse. And this lasted for a few weeks, and then suddenly he arrived in full woman's clothing. And I went, great. Have you prepared your character sheet? Have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done that? Yes, they had. Sit down and let's play. What I didn't know, and I only discovered this much, much later, once this player had gone from being male to being female and having an amazing life whilst doing so, was that in being free to come to these sessions however they wanted to dress, she was welcome. And none of us were going to give a damn about what she was doing. We were interested in what her character was doing. So in not caring about the person, we actually cared about the person, which again is just, it's crazy and it's insane and it is what it is. We are human beings. We are contradictions. We accept certain things and we refute certain things. We fight over certain things and we allow other things to happen. I think the bottom line is my experience when it comes to things like pride marches, when it comes to celebrating certain months and saying it's this month or it's that month or it's et cetera, is to not fight it and say, why, where is White Pride Month, or where is this or where is that? Not turn it political, but to realize that it is simply about allowing everybody to be who they are and who they want to be, and to not cast any kind of judgment upon them unless they are hurting others, and that's the big thing for me, is to simply say, well, you are who you are and I love you for you. Now sit down and play our damn game and be free to be you in our game, because it's a fantasy space, and if you can't be yourself in fantasy, how could you possibly be yourself in reality? We go to fantasy supposedly because that's where we are free to be whatever we want. So we should allow people to do that, I think, anyway. Because I know that when my group allowed me to be whom I wanted to be, it was incredibly liberating. And it was as if the world was suddenly no longer just this dark space that hated me for things that I had no control over. I'm not entirely sure what the point of this video was, and it was definitely inspired by the fact that you see gay pride everywhere, you see the flags up and running, you see the acerbic commentary about corporations just trying to capitalize on gay pride and turn it into a money-making event. Obviously, that's what humans are going to do. We'll make money out of anything, literally, right? That's not the point. The point is, you might have some friends, or you might be someone who has something about yourself that you don't like or that you are hiding, that if you had the right role-playing group or if you have the right table, can come out into the light. And that will cause you to have a much better life. And if that isn't worth fighting for, if that isn't worth talking about, then I don't know what is. Anyway, that's this week's video. Hit the like button if you like the video, if you share my sentiment. Hit the subscribe button if you want to support the channel. And of course, that goblin bell will alert you to when things are coming up. Now, if you are going to leave comments, I think let's be constructive in those comments. Let's try and look at things from multiple angles. I know this is a very polarizing issue within the role-playing space, and a lot of people are going to say, we shouldn't be talking about this in role-playing. There is no room for this in role-playing. And there'll be lots of people who say this is exactly what we should be talking about. It's a polarizing space, and I think the only way that we will ever truly explore it and understand it and come to terms with it is by talking about it. So that's it from me. Today's sponsor is Dungeon Fog. Now, Dungeon Fog has been with our channel since the beginning. Many of the Dungeon Fog founders actually support this channel as patrons, which is mind-blowing. I work with Dungeon Fog as much as I can. They are such a pleasure to work with, to play with, to have games with, to just know as friends. Why? Well, A, they're cool people, but B, their software is the best map-making software I have encountered. I have used lots of map-making software packages out there. I used to draw maps by hand. Yes, it all works. It's all great. But Dungeon Fog makes it so much easier to generate these really super cool maps. You can't go wrong with Dungeon Fog. And if you use the code GREATGM, you'll get a discount when you sign up for that subscription service. Now, just to put a picture or paint a picture, when we released Epic Guide to Nautical Campaigns, pirate sailing ships, Dungeon Fog was there making pirate assets to support us and to allow everybody to make pirate assets. And they did that free. We've now released Bounty Hunter, and they have made over 130 specific sci-fi assets to support Bounty Hunter and the sci-fi community. Again, working with us, saying, well, what would you like? What assets would you like? Etc., etc. I mean, it's absolutely insane. These guys bring out new products, new stuff every 2 months, new props, and there's thousands of props going on. Anyway, I cannot tell you how much Dungeon Fog means to me and to this channel, and hopefully to you as a creator. Anyway, big thank you to you for watching all the way through to the end, and a massive thank you to our patrons, of course, who make this entire channel possible. Until next time, I wish you and yours the very happiest of gaming.